Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the newly released Transformers Bumblebee Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe class Megatron. Very similarly to Optimus Prime, this was a figure that I didn't initially think I was going to be picking up, as the Cyberverse line has never really been a line that's really captivated me until Hasbro released this new wave of entirely new sculpts of mainline deluxe class figures. Finally, we get more accurate, more involved transformations and interpretations of the characters from the show, and I've got to say that Megatron is definitely a good figure, but there is some good points, some bad points, and some really ugly points that I'll be going in depth on in this review. Taking a very quick look at the packaging, we can see that something I'd missed on the Optimus review was that the backdrop for these figures is in fact Cybertron. We can see it here, it almost looks as if though it's exploding, so that is some really cool artwork. We've got the Transformers Bumblebee Cyberverse Adventures Megatron logo. Megatron also includes another Build-A-Figure Part 2 Mac Adam. This time it is the upper torso. The side of the packaging this time has a cool image of Megatron, Starscream and Shockwave, and on the side of the packaging we've got an image of Megatron in robot mode, tank mode, some of the other figures in the assortment as well as the Fusion Mega Shot, and finally the other side of the packaging just has an image of Mac Adam. And here we have Megatron himself. Now in my intro I did state that in this review I would be showcasing the good, the bad and the ugly, and that is because this figure has some amazing points about it that makes it an incredibly enjoyable figure, some bad points which draw back some of those good elements, and then just some really ugly, very poor design choices that really bring this figure down. To begin with, talking about some of the good aspects of this figure, I really like the overall look of this design of Megatron. Now I know that is something to do with the designers of the cartoon and not so much Hasbro. I just really like this Generation 1 inspired design of Megatron with the fusion cannon on his arm. We've got some fantastic G1 inspired detailings in the chest. I just really like the overall design of him. I think he looks really cool, and as we turn around to the back, the figure itself actually does clean up quite nicely on the back and on the legs. Some of the bad points on this figure would be that similarly to Optimus Prime, or should I say even worse than Optimus Prime, this figure has got some horrifically loose joints. He cannot hold his fusion cannon up whatsoever in whatever pose you want him to hold it in. The only way you can really get him posed with it is if you pose him like this, but if you want the fusion cannon out to the side, you honestly aren't going to be able to do this unless you tighten up the joints with floor polish. The leg joints are really loose. This whole figure is just really incredibly floppy, which is such a shame, as much like Optimus, this has some phenomenal articulation. Some of the severely ugly points on this figure for me would be the shoulder pieces. I honestly think they could have perhaps implemented a hinge here to have this fold in upon itself. I mean, perhaps there would have been some clearance issues with this section, but I really think they could have perhaps compressed this ever so slightly, as this really is rather thick and bulky, and any pose you have Megatron in, this entire tread section has to follow it along, and I just think that that's one of the most ugly design choices that this Megatron has, considering that the majority of the figure is so well done in terms of proportion and accuracy to the cartoon. It is merely these pieces that I think are just too large and just really don't go with the overall aesthetic of the figure. Now, taking a look at Megatron's detailing, he has got a really nice looking head sculpt with some piercing red eyes. There isn't much in terms of paint on this figure. He has been cast out of a grey plastic, but in the cartoon Megatron is grey. In some shots he may appear silver, but for the most part I would say he's grey, so using a grey plastic isn't really a drawback for me. He's got a super nice awesome Decepticon insignia in the torso area, some nice red paint apps here on the chest, but we can see that there is unfortunately some paint bleed. I do like the circuitry detailing here. This actually really surprised me when opening this figure out of packaging. We've got some nice details such as treads, but once again these sections are too large, and this piece here mainly plays a more vital role within his tank mode. Not so much detailing in the lower region, there's mainly just some panel lines. I like how these missile pods actually peg onto the outer leg sections of Megatron. That is accurate to the cartoon, and I like that we do have the double missiles at the top, much like we saw in the cartoon. The fusion cannon too is really nicely detailed. It has been painted in a complete black paint app. It is just a matte black paint, and the grey nozzle is just where the plastic is protruding. So overall the detailing on this figure is quite nice. Articulation once again is really well done, but the loose joints just let this figure down in my opinion. The head is on a ball joint, but it's still very loose. Not to the point where it would flop around, but there really isn't much tolerance there whatsoever. The arms can rotate for the full 360 all the way around. They can hinge out to the sides. There isn't an upper bicep joint, however there is a rotation joint at the elbow, as well as a 90-degree bend at the elbow due to this ball joint, and the wrists can rotate 360. Another ugly element that I think this figure has is the fact that the ball joints are in fact exposed on the arms. This is something I would expect from perhaps a Kinder Egg toy, and definitely not a mass-produced deluxe class. I really think if they could have made these hinges, which wouldn't have compromised transformation, I think it would have made this figure look so much better, but as it stands, these ball joints really do look quite ghastly. He does have a 360 rotation at the waist. The legs can kick forwards that far and back about that far. They can hinge out to the sides that far, as well as rotate on this mushroom peg. They can also bend roughly 90 degrees at the knee, and really nicely, much like Optimus, he does in fact have ankle rocker joints, allowing the toes to hinge in and out, as well as forwards and backwards. So once again, articulation for this deluxe is fantastic. It's just such a shame about the sloppy joints. Now there is an alternative way that you can in fact store this fusion cannon, and that is simply by removing it and rotating the arms in just like so that the ball joints can in fact come towards the chest. He does have some handles on each side, which you're just going to want to peg into the ports on either side. And here we have a very, to me, movie 1 inspired choice for Megatron's weapon. This is the join them in extinction pose is what I like to call it. However, the packaging calls it the Mega Fusion Blast or something along the lines of that. Much like Optimus and most of the figures from this wave, he does in fact include a super nice blast effect, which you can just port into the tip of the fusion cannon, and this definitely does help you to set some poses. You can see here he is able to pull off some super nice dynamic poses. It's just such a shame about the loose joints, but that can be rectified. But as I stated in that Optimus review, do you really want to be rectifying your figures? You know, they really should come with quite tight joints as it stands. But this is a really nice looking display option. I'm not entirely sure whether it's cartoon accurate or not, but even if it's not, it's something super cool to include within this figure. Now, in terms of a Macadam Build-A-Figure piece, he does come with the upper torso. There really isn't much I can say about this piece as of yet, as we don't have any of the other limbs, so I won't be delving into too much detail on this just yet. But as it stands, this Macadam Build-A-Figure definitely looks to be quite promising. Now, for a quick size comparison, here I have Megatron compared next to Cyberverse Deluxe Optimus. You can see here that they are basically the exact same height in terms of the head. If anything, Megatron may be ever so slightly taller than Optimus, although it does appear that they are exactly the same height. Once again, all these figures are deluxes, so they are all roughly going to be the same height. And as it stands for Optimus and Megatron, I think that the scale here works really, really nicely. Now, going into Megatron's transformation, once again, similarly to Optimus, it's actually quite involved and interesting. First off, you're going to want to remove the fusion cannon as well as these missile pods. What we can then proceed to do is take these ball joints here and rotate those inwards. We can then come to the inner sections of these and lift these pieces up and slide this down and over. Repeat the same process here for this side, so bring that out, come into this side and bring this out as well. That is also another issue that I have. The ball joints on the arms are incredibly easy to pop off, but something I forgot to mention in the articulation segment is that you can in fact hinge his arms forwards and backwards on a really nice butterfly joint, which is super cool to see on a modern day deluxe. We can then fold this down. We're going to want to bring these up and over his head, and the fists here, there is a slot on this side and a peg on this side. These will just peg together just like that for now. We can then come to this back section, pull this down, fold these pieces out, and then you're not going to want to rotate at the torso. You're actually going to want to rotate up to the upper torso region. Rotate this joint around so that the Decepticon insignia is now facing the back. What we can then do here is pull this section out, and you're just going to want to collapse this down. These tabs here will plug into slots on these, and then these sections will slide into those grooves. So just align all this up and tab that into place. Ensure that the fists haven't unfortunately come untabbed. So just align all of that up. Coming now to these legs, you're going to want to pop out these panels, take these here and rotate those around, rotate this around, take the toes and just fold those inwards as well. Now what we can do is take this leg and take where the shin section is and just bend this in and all of this will fold in upon itself, and this hook section will peg into this section here. So just hook that into place, repeat the same process here for this side, and you can see that these two halves will peg together in the process. Just align all of that up so you're left with something that looks along the lines of this. Taking the fusion cannon, we can just peg it into the top, take these missile pods and peg these into the tops as well. And with all that being said, here we have the Cyberverse Deluxe Megatron, fully transformed and in his tank mode. So definitely quite an enjoyable looking transformation, and I've got to say that for a tank mode, I actually think this is one of the best looking alt forms that we've seen Megatron acquire from all of the lines that have been released so far. We can see that the fusion cannon does become the main turret for this vehicle mode. We've got the missile pods on the sides which look really nice, as well as some nice menacing red paint apps actually on the top of the tank. I also would have liked it if they could have perhaps put some more red paint throughout Megatron's body, as in the show I know he has a lot more red highlights specifically on this fusion cannon as well, but they have seemed to have skimped out on the paint apps on this figure, which is a shame. We've got some nice details here of the treads, and on the underside he does roll on this caster wheel here, as well as these two caster wheels up the front, and he does roll rather nicely as well. So it is quite a nice looking tank mode. There isn't really much to go into too much detail. The turret doesn't rotate at all, it's merely just movable via these three posts at the bottom. So overall, quite a nice looking tank mode, however definitely not the display option that I'll be displaying this figure in at all. We can also take this blast effect here and peg this into the front section of the fusion cannon, or we can remove it and simply peg it into the back like that, in order to give you the illusion as if though, once again similarly to Optimus, he's zooming across the ground in order to fight his enemies. So that was my review on the Transformers Cyberverse Deluxe class Megatron. I do apologise that I didn't have as many pleasant things to say about this figure as I did with the Optimus Prime. As I stated, this figure does have some good points about it, however there are some really bad drawbacks on this figure, and the major drawback for me is the looseness of joints. It seems to be a running trend throughout these Cyberverse figures, and I know I'm probably going to get comments saying that you can easily tighten them up with floor polish, but when you buy a Hasbro product, it doesn't say on the shelf you can buy this product, and be sure to buy yourself a bottle of fledged floor polish, as the joints on these figures are required to be tightened up. I really think that the tolerances should be corrected on these figures, especially considering that deluxes have recently inflated in price, at least here in the UK. This figure currently retails for about £22–23, which is almost the same price as what a Siege Voyager price costs, and I really don't think you're getting the same value for your money, considering that this is a deluxe, and that I don't think the plastic feels as good as some of those other figures. But with all that being said, it's still an upgrade over the previous Megatrons that we've got in the Cyberverse line, and it does have some good elements. I have found myself enjoying this figure. The articulation once again is incredible. I just really wish that they could tighten up their tolerance issues. So with all that being said, if you have this figure, be sure to let me know down in the comments what your copy turned out, and if you don't have this figure, are you planning on adding it to your collection, or are you going to hold off and wait for future waves, or just missing out this line entirely? Be sure to also let me know what you thought of the review, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thank you for watching.